beautiful rebooters. Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Your Life series. I am Linda Krause-Barnett, the author of Reboot Your Life, Bring Back Your Spark. And I'm so glad you're here today. I'm so glad you're taking the time to watch these series and be inspired and motivated by all the women I have on here who have done a reboot of their own life. And today is no different. I have a very, very special guest, Carla Carreira. And Carla, thank you so much for joining us and for being part of the Reboot Your Life series. I'm so glad to have you. And so maybe you could just start off introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about who you are.
Fantastic. I would love to do so. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in spaces where it's an empowering space for us to explore and to delve into this internal process and how we interact with the world. So this is great.
Yes, thank you.
I have quite a few different passions of mine. One is delving into sex and intimacy coaching, and it actually came about from my passion with somatic experiencing, which is a therapeutic methodology that works with reorganizing the way our body responds to stress. And so as a result of studying that, I became very impassioned about taking the individual process into the interactive process with friends and family and society, and how we practice from the inside out. And so that led me to really delve into different communication styles and therapeutic exercises and ideas that can be incorporated with somatic therapy, which ultimately led me to sexology. So I am pursuing both a PhD in psychology and a second master's in sexology. So
You're very busy.
I am. And those are my main passions, but also as a dancer and as a dance teacher, one of the other aspects of the healing journey for me has been how to incorporate movement into the healing journey. And so I have been playing with different setups in workshops where I'm introducing, theater therapy exercises with dance and movement. And so that has been really interesting. I love the fusion of these different arts and how to bridge together these different ways that we have of communicating. So I'll bring in some psychology and relational exercises along with the movement classes as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
It's like I need to make my way around the world interviewing rebooters, because there's nothing that like lights me up more than how beautiful each person, it's like when we hide our gifts, we're doing such a disservice, because when we actually step in to what we're here to offer, the world just becomes a better place. And there's so many people, including yourself, like you just mentioned, like you've incorporated movement and theater and dance as a way to heal. And we just, don't realize how many ways there are to kind of heal from trauma and to grow and move past our limiting beliefs. And each person that steps out courageously and says, you know what, I think that this is a modality that might help. I think that this is a way to step into your greatness and to heal any kind of pain that's locked inside. And there are so many different ways to do that. It just like gives me chills to think about it. I followed you and I went to some of your pages and I saw a video that you had where you were doing a dance in the pool.
Yes.
And I was enthralled. I like couldn't take my eyes off you. And I just thought to myself as I was watching it, it's so uncommon to see it in adults, but if it was a child making a video like that, we wouldn't think twice about it. We wouldn't even bat our eyes, because their natural intuition of their body seems like appropriate for their age. But then when we do it as adults, it's like we're stepping into some, I don't know, everybody's like, whoa, but it felt it felt extreme. It resonated so deeply, but it also felt so childlike that I was just
Mhm.
entranced by what you were doing.
I am so happy you brought that up because it actually ties together with my entire philosophy of life, and it came about in a in an African fusion belly dance class about 8 years ago, where the music it was everything. It was a mixture of, you know, you could hear like Congo and you can hear this Latin beat, and it was, you know, Lebanese belly dance like music, and it was this mixture of absolutely beautiful music. And it came to me in that moment as I was listening to this fusion song that this is how we are. We enter this world as pure humans, as beautiful, non-judgmental beings, and this process of socialization takes us on a specified path where we disregard these other options and these other
Exactly.
ways of being. And so I came to this realization many years ago that the whole point of life, for me, is to go back to that childlike state of embracing joy and embracing the world as it is, uh, without judging it, and just finding your space in this world and being in that wonder and joy of what childlike energy is. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think that's part of, you know, having that inside is part of what motivates me to keep developing these movement psychotherapy crossover classes, because I really think there's a lot of healing that can come from tapping into this innocence that we were all born into. And it's just something that we're socialized to forget, unfortunately.
I agree 100%. And I, even as a parent, I find myself doing the same thing, you know, and worrying about those same concepts with my children. Like, how much of their natural just essence am I subduing for the sake of discipline or conformity? And how much, you know, because we place these boundaries on how to raise a child, but at the same time, it's like, how do we maintain that wonder, that wanderlust, that like vibrancy, that enthusiasm, so that, you know, they don't lose it along the way. And it's funny because in the thread that I have found in this Reboot Your Life series, because most of the interviews, in fact, I think to date, all of them have been women. And all of this in common is us kind of excavating our way back to our true selves, excavating our way back to that deep, deep, deep heart-centered knowing. And it's like, I keep asking myself the question, how do we, all we're doing is trying to pave a way back to where we started in the first place. So how can we do this in a way that allows us to maintain that authenticity to like who we were born to be?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think this space of finding peace with different aspects of history and our eccentricities and idiosyncrasies is what led me to really feel like writing a book would be my next, a
Absolutely.
semi-autobiographical book about these three generations of women and how each was brought up in a culture different than what they were born in, and how that shaped, you know, the conflicting messages about what is appropriate and what isn't, and how they came to peace with each which each aspect of themselves that would be seen in one place and then something to be hidden in another. I'm fascinated by this idea of, you know, what is, so much is contextual, you know, about
Oh my
the
gosh.
healing process. And what would it be like if we were just to take it as it is without changing the healing process for our environment, to just accept us as we are, you know? And yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
resonate with
agree.
you.
It's like I've always questioned what would and I know contrast I believe in, you know, so I believe that because of the bad we know good, and because of the dark we know light. So I absolutely believe in contrast, but I think that contrast is a very different concept than resistance. I don't think they're synonymous. There's this wild woman inside of us, but
Mhm.
we're so afraid of the judgment because wild has such a connotation, like she's a mother, how can she be so wild, or she's too, you know, sexual, or she's too, we assign these labels to that wild
Mm.
essence inside of us. But that is our true nature. And the more we tap into her and allow her to express herself in this life, I think the more we grow, the more we evolve, the more we create, and the more we take others with us.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the journey for me, I feel like it's important to add a caveat that, you know,
Yes.
that video was an evolution of many years of small risks over a long period of time. You know, when I look at the person I was a few years ago, you know, indebting myself in the States to get a graduate degree, to go through, to climb the ladder, to do all these things. And then I look at my life now in Europe and how much more relaxed I am and how much more expressive I am. It's a completely, I wouldn't say they're different versions of me, but it's an evolution. You know, it, it definitely is not something we do overnight. And I think this is why I appreciate somatic therapy so much, because it's about embracing the how in small titrated steps, so that you're not going from 0 to 100 within a few seconds or a few days, or, you know, even a few months. You know, you're really giving time for the nervous system to believe that the reality can be different. And oftentimes we put so much pressure on our minds to quickly deduce certain things about our reality that are not heart-based,
Mm-hmm.
that are not soul-based. And so we end up making these assessments that are often incorrect, or have a limited purpose, because it doesn't
100%.
incorporate the totality of a situation or of a person. And so, you know, I would say that taking the wisdom of somatic experiencing and incorporating small, consistent changes over time will allow for the nervous system to trust the new ground that is being set, you know. And, you know, because, you know, revolution doesn't happen from one moment to another. It happens over the course of many mistakes and many issues that override and overlap and, you know, build on itself. And I think the human growth process, you know, our evolutionary process can be like that as well. And so, yeah.
I love that. Before I want to give the audience a sense of how, if they, you know, we're going to link all your contact information so that they have ways to work with you and reach you. So I want to talk about what that work would look like. But before I do, you just really something really tapped in when you talked about the nervous system, because I've been talking about it a lot lately. And you know, I think that what we need to realize, at least in my opinion, I don't know how scientific this is, but the nervous system is like its own sentient being, right? It
Mm-hmm.
has its own consciousness. And I think that the reason the nervous system can have a anxious kind of panic effect and impact on us is because we're not honoring it as a conscious being. You know, we're not saying that we're not, we see it as symptomatic almost in nature, you know, like I'm having these symptoms. But the flip side of that is the nervous system is a communication center. And so the symptoms are a modality, a way of your nervous system saying something's off or something's on or this is excitement, or and the more we open a line of communication with it and actually look at it as its own sentient being and say, hey, I hear you, you're here, I'm listening. What do you need from me? Do you need movement? Do you need breath? Do you need, because, you know, the heart gives you a message, but then I believe that the nervous system communicates to you where to take that message. Is this a good, is this a left turn or a right turn? It's like a navigation system for our body. And if we don't know the language of the nervous system, then clearly when we feel it, it just feels symptomatic. But it should feel more like a language, like, okay, I've got to learn how to speak with you and you're speaking to me, and we've just got to get on the same page with our dialogue. I am learning that in my lifetime because anxiety and panic have been such a crucial part of my life that now I'm learning when I get those surges of energy and I don't know why they're there, then I turn and I face it and I say, okay, you're speaking to me in an energetic language. I'm not fluent yet, and I give myself grace, or I try to. I don't know this language yet. I'm not familiar 100%. Talk me through it. Like, let's go a little deeper. Where do you want this feeling to take me, and where are we going with this? I think we don't realize that movement of our body is a way to speak to that energetic realm, right?
Absolutely. I absolutely love the way that you are describing this two-way communication with the nervous system. It is absolutely on point, and a very compassionate way of speaking on top of that, because oftentimes we can even judge our bodies for having certain reactions
Yes.
rather than accepting it for where it's at.
Oh my gosh,
And
100%.
and there are so many messages that our body is giving us at any given point, and there are so many subtleties. It can be in all the different aspects of the way our body functions, like the circulatory system interacting with the nervous system, with the skeletal, the digestive, the respiratory system. All of these parts of us are giving us messages at any point in time.
So true.
Whether our breath is relaxed when we're speaking to a new person or not, whether we tense up or not in a given situation, um, our bowel movements, like the rhythms that we have, our menstrual cycles, is it consistent? Is it erratic? The, our joints, are they, you know, weird and weird feeling at certain places where it's hard to move, you know, how open our pelvis is, like, I mean, there's just so many different messages. And so we like to think that the entire system is from the mind down to the body, but actually so much of it is from the gut, going, all the messages from the gut going all the way up to the brain. And so, there's so much wisdom there, so much. And yeah, the somatic aspect is
Yeah, so tell
kind
us
of
about
becoming,
that.
yeah,
Like, so when people reach out to you, kind of what, explain it to us, because I know that's not a word that's mainstream. It's, unfortunately it will be, but right now people are just
yeah.
learning and exploring. I think people are more open than they ever have been before to this type of healing. So tell us a little bit more about what you do and how people can, how it can help people.
Yeah, so somatic therapy comes from a soma of the body,
Okay.
so awareness of the the body reactions at any given point. And so it stems from a psychologist called Peter Levine, who was studying animals and how they behave in the wild, behaviors between predators and prey.
Mm.
And they were noticing that the prey, after they got away from an attack, think of an antelope running away from a tiger or something, they noticed, him and his team, that there were certain somatic responses that these animals had before it was like a completion response to the shock and the stress of being almost eaten. So some animals, they played dead, and then when they got away, they would shake it off. Others would like hold their breath and then start breathing heavily, like finally in a relaxation state. So it's this practice of regulating from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, from active um, activeness and rest and digestion. And so the body, when it's regulated, it will naturally go between these two states in a consistent
Yeah,
fashion
like with
where
ease.
there will flow. You
Yeah.
know, a stressful situation happens, you contract, and then, you know, something occurs where the stress is over and you release and you expand again. And what happens in our everyday society is that we are so bombarded with stress signals that we don't actually have this natural flow of expansion and
Makes
contraction.
perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So then what ends up happening is that we're living perpetually in a state of stress where we are consistently active and we are not resting
Yeah, there's no
sufficiently.
neutrality.
No.
Right.
And so if you think of it like in EKG, you know, like or
Yes,
like
the
a
line
heart
is
monitor,
always up
you know,
here.
like it's like jagged up and down, up and down, up and down, whereas a regulated nervous system will be more wavy with like more wider mountainous wavelengths.
Yes, that
And
makes
so
so
the
much sense
idea,
to my brain.
yeah, so the idea of therapy is about going from this reactive place of like, I'm okay, and then jagged up activation, and then like going down and then freezing and then having to respond again really quickly. It's about really giving space and uh, allowing for opportunities where the nervous system can finish out a completion response with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawn is like the least known one.
Yeah,
Um,
fawn.
yeah, fawn is similar. It's like when an animal kind of befriends their enemy to survive. So often this might be a way that women are often socialized, you know, like we'll befriend someone to get on their good side. And it's like a kind of a more passive aggressive take. So fawn is actually a coping mechanism as well, you know, where you're not fully embodied because you're in survival mode and it just looks like you're calmer, but really you're fighting to survive by befriending the enemy in a way. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so, yeah, the nervous system is often like it's tied to both the prefrontal cortex and also the reptilian part of our brains. And so when we are too stressed, the brain is unable to react from a rational place, and it goes into that emotional brain, that old brain. And so this is where it can get a little bit hairy, you know, where we have these default responses for different contexts of situations, you know, where based on our history, we might be perfectly fine defending ourselves against someone trying to steal our purse. But then when someone might be trying to convince us of something and it feels uncomfortable, maybe we'll freeze, you know, or, uh, you know, maybe if someone is too confrontational, we'll run away, but won't know how to, you know, embrace the situation and embrace confrontation. So people have all kinds of default responses in their nervous system, which is tied to their history and their upbringing and their social context and what they were allowed to be and not be, going back to the child state where, you know, we're socialized in different ways. And so, yeah, my healing journey began really when I learned of somatic therapy many years ago. And I remember thinking, you know, someday I'm going to be stable in my nervous system, that I'm going to be able to offer this beautiful um, compendium of wisdom, you know, that I'm going to be able to be a safe space for other people to explore their nervous system.
Okay.
And that was a great motivation because I had tried many different kinds of therapies for many years, and none have been as potent for me as all the therapies related to the body, bringing it back to the body. And it was actually during a 10-day Vipassana silent meditation retreat about 5 years ago where I realized that about 80% of my thoughts were pure worry and anxiety, and that only about 20% was based on heart space. And, you know, I'm kind of very methodical and analytical and academic about things. So, you know, it was about 14 hours of meditation per day. And I would clock myself, you know, every hour
Wow.
I would evaluate my thought process, and I would measure, well, how much of this hour was I actually able to obtain the silence, this non-judgmental place. And it was pretty consistent. You know, it decreased a little bit, but it was always at about 80% was, you know, worries would come in and it would invade my entire system.
Yeah, I know that well.
And so, yeah, it was very, very powerful for me to notice this on a daily basis. And it really was a page turner, where it really allowed me to say, I need to change this entire chapter of my life. Like, I am done living from this stress response. I want peace. And so it led me to traveling for a couple years, where I was really searching for an environment where I could live that kind of life, where my nervous system would not be activated so readily by the spaces around me, and where I would feel comfortable to embark on this consistency of practice. So, like, I cannot emphasize that enough, that it's not a one weekend workshop that you do that's going to change
Of
your life.
course. It's progression,
And
like you said, not perfection,
yeah, and
progression.
yeah, and it's choosing a lifestyle that allows for your values to be on the front page of your life, you know.
Yes.
and I decided, you know, living this kind of mindfulness is something that brings me serenity and joy, and I want to make it the front end of my life. And so I slowly began to navigate and work, you know, the work as much as I could with creating that and creating that environment. And ultimately that led me to Spain. So, you know, it's hard to know where my life will end up, but, you know, it's, at the moment, Spain is a wonderful space where where my values feel reflected in the culture. So, I'll give you an example. You know, when my first Christmas, you know, I didn't know anybody. I had just met someone, a couple new friends, and, you know, in the States, it's like, oh, we're going to a party. Here's the address, take an Uber, and I'll meet you
I'll meet you
there.
there, yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, it wasn't like that. Like, I was new. I was taking public transport for the first time to this part of town, and these new friends, they waited for me at the bus stop. And then on top of that, someone had locked their keys in the car, so they needed to wait for someone in the family to come with a second set of keys. And rather than everybody going to the party and saying, "See you, I'll see you at the party," everybody waited with this person in the middle of the night, you know, not letting them be alone in
Yeah.
this adversity, in this
Yeah.
difficulty. And I really appreciated that. I really felt, as they say in Spanish,
Connected.
acogido, like I felt
Yes.
embraced. And I'm like, I could see myself here with, like, this set of values. And so it is from that place where I've created this, you know, internal stability, and I practice that on a consistent basis, where I really feel very grateful to have begun this journey as a practitioner, and to also mix that with sex and intimacy coaching, because
It's
I've
all
always
connected.
been a little bit of a social psychologist, where it's like, you know, you have the growth from the inside, and then how does that reflect in your relationships outwardly? And, you know, I think there's a really beautiful thing, because one of the great lessons of research done by Peter Levine is that co-regulation is actually the strongest um, indicator of being able to achieve this nervous system regulation. It's the fact that you have someone else that is there to give you a hug. You have someone else that's deep breathing. We are social creatures,
Of
and
course.
in capitalist countries, we love to think that we can do this all on our own, and it's so not the case. And so the co-regulation aspect is such an important piece of long-term healing. And while initially, you know, maybe maybe people don't have that environment to start off with. And that's where, a lot of my um, role is to serve as that co-regulator, so that someone can relax into their nervous system and have that practice of someone being able to be with them in those dark places that they're not used to, where they would usually panic or they would usually want to run away. Then
It's an
that's
anchor.
where
It
we
serves
practice.
almost like an anchor for them.
Yeah, so that's where
Yes.
we work with completion responses, and what is it that the nervous system is having an impulse to do, and that can take the many different forms. And so during a session, there will be, it's kind of like a visualization of sorts, where the person gets into their nervous system, into their bodies, and then it's a mixture of talk and movement, but it's always centered on the body. So one of the things I love about this kind of therapy is that, maybe you'll see a person and you don't know their entire history. You only know bits and pieces, because what's relevant isn't logically, I don't know, my mother left me in a park for 2 hours when I was 3, and now I have this abandonment thing. It's not done through words. That kind of communication is done non-verbally, or through body language, or even verbally, but through different, not through words, through different kinds of sounds. And so it's a really beautiful thing to
Powerful.
reach this kind of awareness without leaning on words, to go back to this origin of our body wisdom, and allow that to open up the next step in the journey. Be that, lots of crying, be that
Yes, the
shaking like the
opening.
animals, yeah,
Yes.
trembling, twitching of the eyes. There's so many different ways that the body will release.
Yeah,
So it's a
purge.
beautiful, 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 beautiful thing to really witness, because you see results uh, pretty easily, because it's the body. Yeah.
It fills me up. What I want to say to anybody watching is go deep inside of yourself and ask yourself what it is that you need. That is what self-love, the premise of self-love is unique to everyone, because you need something different. You came here for your mission and purpose, which is unique to you and is unlike anyone else's. So
Mm.
when you go deep inside of yourself and you say, what is it that I need to heal? What is it that I want moving forward? What is it that would make this present moment so aware and beautiful? And ask yourselves these questions of how to anchor your soul into this life so that you just squeeze the juice out of it. And I
Mm.
hope that all of these women that are coming to you with their heart and souls in the Reboot Your Life series, if they resonate with you, tap into that and say, maybe this is resonating because I need this, because this is speaking to my heart and it's speaking to my soul. And in honoring that, in following that intuitive calling, then you are activating self-love. You are saying, this path is mine. And I know it because when I hear that, it's just like when I watched Carla's video, I knew that it was speaking to me. And I knew that I had to dive deeper and look deeper into it, because my soul was talking to me and it was saying, you need more of this. You have that wild Linda inside of you that wants to move without judgment or without fear of judgment. And it kind of gave me permission to do that. So if you hear any of this and you feel connected, then you need to give yourself permission as a form of self-love to follow that calling, to see where that path leads. All of Carla's information will be given to you so that you can reach her directly. And I just encourage you to, the way I see it is almost like a spider web. I see it a little different, but the best analogy I can give is a spider web for some reason, just because I think of like all the lattice work of a spider web. And so for me, when I started self-love, it was like, okay, what do I need? What is it that I want to work on? And then I honestly believe that every single guest that I've had on Reboot Your Life is an extension of that inner grid, of that inner web, that lattice work. Because as I tapped into my intuition and what I really wanted to feel and to know, it was like I then had this lace, these tentacles come out and go, okay, not this, but that, not this, but that. And I was able to attract and magnetize what I believe are people that were meant for Reboot Your Life series, that are meant to serve the audience that's listening. And so once you tap in here, that is your attraction. That is just like what Carla said. You know where you want to live. You know who you want in your vortex, because it resonates. It completely magnetizes with the grid work inside of your heart. And so I don't believe anything is an accident. I think we're all interconnected in this beautiful way. I think Carla was brought into Reboot Your Life because I think so many of you are going to connect to her message and to her way of holding space for you and healing. So I'm honored to share her work, and I'm honored to share her links. And I'm so glad to have met her because I feel like she's a soul sister already. And that's it. Carla, I'm so honored that you were here, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I am so honored as well. I noticed that I was taking so many deep breaths as you were talking, and I feel this resonance with you that is so beautiful. So I feel also like you do, like that this is a great place to to connect, because your ideas and the people you're bringing on the show, like we're all saying the same thing about connecting to love,
Yes.
and
Oh my
connecting
gosh.
to self-awareness, and connecting to the peace within. And so that's a beautiful message to share. So thank you so much for having me, and for everybody out there listening. The links will be posted, and it's carlacarreira.com. And it'll be a pleasure to receive any questions. And there's a free 30-minute discovery meeting should you wish to connect with me, and we will do a session over video. So it would be a pleasure to get to know anybody through questions or sessions or otherwise.
Thank you for your time, your space, your energy, your soul, your spirit, and all of it. Thank you all for watching and being a part of the Reboot Your Life series, and we will see you next time. Thank you.